It's not an overstatement to say that some of the most virtuosic and expressive music I've ever heard was played by pianist Keith Jarrett. He's one of the most important composers and improvisers in musical history. In addition to his career in jazz, he's also made historically important recordings of the classical repertoire. I was recently fortunate enough to interview him at his home in New Jersey. But before we start the interview, let me give you a sketch of his amazing and impactful career. Keith Jarrett began his musical career as a drummer at age 2 with 2 celery sticks, as he talks about in this 2014 acceptance speech at the NEA Masters Award ceremony.
When I was 2 years old, I played on the kitchen table with celery sticks. So my first instrument was the drums. And my mother discovered at also the same age that I was playing along with melodies coming from the radio. And she thought, well, this is strange.
By the age of 7, he was performing advanced pieces by Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart. Once in high school, he developed a strong interest in jazz, even turning down an invitation to study with Nadia Boulanger in Paris. Instead, choosing to study jazz at Berklee School of Music in Boston. But after just 1 year at Berklee, he moved to New York and was hired by Art Blakey to play with his jazz messengers. This gig gave him visibility as a player and led to a lifelong friendship with drummer Jack DeJohnette. DeJohnette soon recommended Jarrett to saxophonist Charles Lloyd. Jarrett joined Lloyd's band just in time to record his seminal Forest Flower record, which successfully combined the styles of rock and jazz. In addition to playing with Lloyd, Jarrett began gigging around New York in a trio with bassist Charlie Hayden and drummer Paul Motion. 1967 saw his first release as a leader in Life Between Exit Signs. In '68, he joined Miles Davis's group on electric piano and organ, playing with Davis until 1971. By '72, he had found his spiritual home at ECM Records, releasing the pivotal solo piano record entitled Facing You. Of that record, Ted Gioia wrote, Jarrett helped shape a new language for improvised music, demonstrated the marvels of his conception of touch, explored novel paths of thematic development, and recalibrated the roles of the left and right hands in piano jazz, all in the course of a 10-minute performance. Also in 1972, Keith released the record Birth. This is the first record that I ever got turned on to. I got this record back in the 70s, and it was the first record of what's now known as his American Quartet, featuring Dewey Redman on the saxophone, Charlie Hayden on bass, and Paul Motion on drums. When I interviewed Pat Metheny, I asked him about Keith and the American Quartet.
I mean, he's in his own category in every way. To me, that's the last guy. I mean, really the last guy, where he's got his own music, he's got his own, that band, the American Quartet, to me, that was the last great acoustic jazz group, where like Monk's Quartet or the Miles Quintet or the Train Quartet. And, you know, nobody plays that music because it's too hard.
Right.
And he doesn't make any effort whatsoever. I don't think he particularly wants anybody to play his music, to tell you the truth. I think he's like, well, we played it already, and anybody else is probably not going to be as good as that. But that book of tunes that he wrote between the American Quartet and the Scandinavian Quartet, to me, that book of tunes, as tunes, before you, I mean, not even talking about him as a player,
right,
just as songs, is the last great songbook.
Also in the 70s, Jarrett had a second quartet, which we refer to as the European Quartet. This particular record is one of my favorites. This is called Belonging. It came out in 1974. This group of Scandinavian musicians featured Jan Garbarek on the saxophone, Paula Danielson on the bass, and Yoon Christensen on drums. In 1973, he began recording solo piano music of all improvised pieces. The particular album, this is pretty funny actually. I have 3 of. This is the Bremen Lausanne concerts. That's 1, That's 2. And that's 3. And you might say, Rick, why do you have 3 of the same record? Because every time that I couldn't find it, I just went out and rebought it again because it was so important to me. It was really one of the pieces that I played on this that I got in touch with Keith because he watched my video on it. Check this out. One side of these 3 LPs. It says 12 minutes and 34 seconds on here, but if you look at it on Spotify, it's part of a 64-minute piece, all combined. So the chances of stumbling on these 2 minutes when it's 34 minutes into the piece is just about impossible. But I'm going to play it for you right now. Second voice. These solo piano performances led to widespread popularity outside of just jazz audiences. This particular record, The Cologne Concert, came out in 1975. It's a record of solo improvised piano, and it's the biggest selling solo piano record of all time. Keith also performed, believe it or not, on SNL in 1978, where he performed his song Country. This success let him stretch out and experiment on other recordings. He made Hymns Spheres, a set of improvisations on a Baroque pipe organ, in response to the rise of synthesizers in contemporary music. Book of Ways was an album that featured a series of improvised pieces on the clavichord. Check it out. Beautiful. And finally, he made the deeply personal album Spirits, on which he multi-tracked all the instruments, including piano, soprano sax, percussion, recorders, Pakistani flute, and guitar. In 1983, he formed his Standards Trio with DeJohnette and bassist Gary Peacock. Though the group played tunes thought of as jazz standards, for over 30 years the group stunned audiences with their brilliant, seemingly telepathic interplay. After the Standard Trio's final performance in 2014, Jarrett continued to perform solo concerts until 2017 with his final performance at Carnegie Hall in New York City. In 2018, he suffered 2 strokes that left his left side paralyzed. But as you'll see, he can still play fluid, intricate lines on the piano, voice lead chords, and interspersed bass notes, all with the right hand when needed. Commenting on the interplay of the instrument, the audience, the space, and the performance, he told an audience once, "What you don't understand is that I couldn't have done it without you." Each note is a new discovery, and Jarrett is both the performer and observer, expressing his immense experience of truth and of being, making us all the richer. Here's my interview with the great Keith Jarrett. I like to just have a conversation anyways, Keith.
That's all I'm good for.
The last time I visited, we talked about what you've been doing for the past few years and how you're getting back to doing some playing.
I just come in here and I doodle around. I would have to call it doodling.
How do you have to adapt then for playing with as far as accompaniment?
That kind of stuff.
Did your parents encourage you as far as improvising, things like that, or did they listen to jazz? Was your dad a jazz listener?
Well, he didn't know he was, but he listened to Percy Faith, Nelson Riddle, Doris Day's, the Jackie Gleason Orchestra.
Jackie Gleason, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he liked that kind of stuff, and this Spike Jones and the City Slickers.
Yeah.
I loved that too. I mean, what I got from my father was his sense of humor.
Okay.
But my mother would turn the radio on, and she wished she would be a singer with a band too. Once I was working on some piece, and I said, I don't think I can play this. It's too hard. She said, "Can you play the first note?" I said, "Yes." "Can you play the second note?" "Yes." "Then you can play this piece."
That's pretty smart there.
Oh, I had good parents.
That's pretty great. We talked last time about, I want to talk about spirits and recording here. Mm-hmm. This is your studio. When did you actually build this? Was this barn here, or was this...
No.
This is a complete add-on, right?
And the real estate, the land inspectors came by and called it Jarrett's Folly. They had no idea what I could be possibly doing with all this shit in here.
Right. So you built this in the 70s though, right?
Yeah.
Was the idea, I'm going to have a place to record that I could put a couple pianos in? And
I maybe thought of pianos first, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this piano was in the living room.
Okay.
And there was nothing else. And then the Christmas tree also was in the living room. But I had the German one shipped in eventually, but there was a architect lady who also built the second floor on the house.
Okay.
And she designed the studio, and I had a sound guy that recorded me a couple of times come in and do the inside of it.
People didn't have their own recording studios typically.
That's true.
Were you thinking, oh, this is going to be a place where I'm going to actually make some of my records?
Yeah.
That was kind of the idea, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully. Tell me about your collection. I see you have all your recorders and
Yeah, including the great bass recorder.
yeah. And so, did you just buy those over time when you run across one, or?
Do you know Mika LaPetri?
Yeah.
Well, I did an album with her.
Oh yeah.
Two of them, one with Bach and one Handel.
Yeah.
And I asked these, and then I did one with Makarski, the violinist.
Yeah.
And I'd ask them what harpsichord did they want me to use. 'Cause
Okay.
there are still two there.
Yeah. How did you learn how to play all these things, Keith? I know you played sax, you played soprano. You were playing that in the 60s.
Yeah, I played trumpet also.
You have such a beautiful soprano sound. What did you just start playing with it? Did you just teach yourself?
Yeah, I did have. In fact, when I was with Miles, he wasn't really happy with who was the alto player in that band at the time. And he asked me to show him how to bend notes. Miles asked me, "Can you do that?" I said, "No, he's not going to like this." And by the way, Miles was so beautiful. He's such a beautiful guy.
Was he?
Yeah, the people that had trouble with him, like maybe Chick at some point, I never had that kind of problem with Miles.
Would you hang out with Miles after the shows? Like, what would you guys do?
The first time I had a chance to talk to Miles, I saw his quintet in what was the name of that club in New York? Not the Village Vanguard, the Village Gate.
Okay.
I saw him there with I think with Chick, and I was playing in a club in Paris called Le Chameleon.
Okay.
I think also there was one called Le Chat qui pêche, the cat that the fishes. I don't know. But anyway, it was so small I could hold about 10 people
Okay.
in the audience downstairs. And Miles brought his band in.
Okay.
I was playing with Aldo Romano
Uh-huh.
and J.F. Jenny Clark, they were both good. I was a big friend of Aldo's. I wrote some memoirs and I have him a lot in that. But Miles came up to me and said, "How do you do that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" "Play from nothing." I said, "I just do it." That was the beginning of that.
And then, how did you get the call? How do you get the call to do things like that back then, Keith? Do you get a phone call from Miles, or?
That's interesting. He came to a club while I was playing, and he also said some very interesting thing at the time.
Okay.
He said, "That's not your instrument." And I said, "Yeah, how do you know that?" Everybody is... I mean, because I loved the horns, I loved trying to sing. Those are the only words that we shared at that club. That was an American in New York club.
Chick was playing with Miles,
Yeah.
and then you guys played together.
And
I
we
know
played
that.
in Philadelphia.
But not for long, though, because Chick didn't play.
Not long.
You
no.
guys only played a little bit together.
No, because Miles said, I don't know if he said this to his producer, but he said, "Just come and play anytime, you know." And I thought, well, I'm not sure.
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
You were in Charles Lloyd's band
Yeah.
with Jack.
And Blakey's band before that.
Blakey's band, so you played with Chuck Mangione there. Did you meet Gary back then, Gary Peacock, back in the, or was that later on?
The first time I ever saw Gary, he was coming out of a Citroen in front of the Vanguard.
Okay.
And I was just on the sidewalk, but I had seen him play with Bill once in Boston, so I knew who it was.
Yeah.
And that was when we met.
Keith, what is the difference between playing with a bass player, let's say Gary and Charlie Hayden? What's it feel? What do you play different things when you're playing with them, or do they play different things?
Well, Charlie's a singular guy. I mean, his whole story, if you know his story, and
Yeah.
that's singular already.
Yeah.
So everybody in music is supposed to portray who they are when they play.
Mm-hmm.
And according to what you were asking, both those guys did exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Gary could have probably played with a lot of different people, and Charlie might have had to be a stylistically important separately from the other players.
You mean his own personality,
Yeah,
really, because he had
yeah.
such a strong personality.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he loved Bach. He loved music of all kinds, and he listened to sing. Gary never listened to vocalists.
Okay.
I know that because he asked me, "Do you know the words to the songs we're playing?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, Jack and I shared that ability that we remember words.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I once asked Paul before I worked with Gary. I was talking to Paul because Paul had worked with Scott LaFaro and
Right.
Gary.
Yeah.
Amazing. The 28-year-old car crash thing. I asked him what's the difference between Scott LaFaro and Gary, and he said, "I'll draw you a picture." Scott was more delicate than what he drew about Gary, and Gary was like edgy and.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When you decided to form the trio
Yeah.
with Jack and Gary, was there ever any question of maybe it's not gonna be Gary, maybe it would be somebody else?
I first asked Steve Swallow
Okay, interesting.
before I had the trio with Charlie,
Okay,
and Steve said, "Oh wait," and he didn't get back to the phone for a while, and then he said, "I can't play my upright bass anymore." And I said, "Are you kidding?" He said, "No, I'm serious."
because he didn't want to, or he just couldn't do it.
Well, he had enough work lined up with it, I think,
Yeah.
because I called him again and I said, like I really was looking for this.
Okay, so I want to ask this, Keith. Where did you develop your vocabulary as far as the sound of the what I call American sound, where you have gospel, you have what sounds like hymns, you have all these American elements in your playing that really, using triads and things like that, that you would use in your improvisations that people didn't really use in improvisational,
That's right.
in playing standards and things like that. People didn't do that.
I got less interested with fourths, the way
You never play fourths.
McCoy.
Yeah.
I did do it, but on a couple of things.
Yeah.
Like the thing I played for you that I did
At Eastman.
at Eastman.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some parts of that I'm
Yeah.
playing the fourths.
Let me give you a little context about what Keith's talking about there related to fourths. He's talking about fourth voicings in the left hand like McCoy Tyner used to do. Keith did not do that very often, but when I visited him a couple weeks before this interview, I visited him and his wife Akiko, and we hung out for a few hours and we listened to music. And this one piece in particular he's talking about is a piece that he wrote for the Eastman Chamber Orchestra in 1976 that he had just gotten a recording of, and he played for me. And the fourth voicings are voicings like this that are based in fourths in the left hand. As you'll hear, this is Keith and I actually listening to the piece.
Fourths. Yes.
But I mean, other than Coltrane, as a pianist, I was more interested in. I mean, I guess I was Bachian.
Yeah.
You know.
A lot of counterpoint.
Yeah.
The movements of the inner lines that you're playing.
Yeah, that was what I did the most of. For example, the tune "Country"
Mm-hmm.
is a good example of what I was thinking when I was thinking of a kind of simplicity. Then there's another thing called rider. It goes. I would say you're right. I think it's American.
Yeah, and no one was doing that.
No.
This is your own language. Steve Swallow with Gary Burton, and that language, they kind of adopted that. And then later on, Pat Metheny did too, this Midwestern thing. Now, being from Allentown is kind of like being from the Midwest.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Would you agree?
Yep. It's a church-related thing.
Yes. And Charlie. So Charlie's
And
thing.
Charlie, yeah.
And honestly, Ornette's music has that...
Yep.
I don't want to say country. Is it country elements to it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have called that song country if I wasn't thinking it.
Right.
And there's an encore on a Carnegie Hall solo concert called "The Good America."
Uh-huh.
Like it's almost like a prayer.
Mm-hmm. I've never heard you talk about your language of what you played like that.
I haven't, so I don't know how to answer you.
Yeah.
I just thought there was a missing triadic thing in some of these other guys playing piano.
Yeah.
Here's another song that I'm using triads with. The bass line I can't play with it, of course. And then it goes. That is also part of other cultures. It's not exactly South American or Mexican, but
Maybe
it could be.
Caribbean or something?
Caribbean,
Yeah. Yeah, calypso almost.
Well, and when I played Brazil, I was very aware that that music meant a lot to me. I wasn't playing any bossa novas on my recordings, but I love that.
Yeah, tell me about that. You didn't really play a lot of bossa novas.
Well, that's because I don't know. I don't know which jazz drummers really know how to use the drums the way they do.
Right. Okay.
I used to play my drum set that way.
Right.
If I had a reason to.
And then I asked Keith if he's a fan of Antonio Carlos Jobim. He said, "Oh, I love Jobim. I love the tune Desafinato." And then he just started playing it, I think just by ear.
What do you know about the Deerhead Inn?
About the record or about the place?
Place. It's the first jazz gig I ever had, and I was 14 or something at my mother's house. My piano tuner is married to the daughter of the owners at that time, and I met the daughter, and she was like younger than me by far, and then she still lives in Easton with her husband.
Okay.
It's the longest lasting jazz club ever, anywhere. 50 years.
Oh my
The
gosh.
Vanguard did not last that long.
That's right.
And it's still going.
Still going, right?
Yeah.
When did you guys do the recording there? 92 maybe?
1 or 2.
91? Yeah.
And it has my favorite Bye Bye Blackbird solo. there.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the audience heard it too, and you can hear them hearing it when it was at its best. And that's the most swinging I ever remember Paul to be. I hadn't played with Paul for, decades.
Yeah. After taking a short break, I asked Keith if I could play him one of his own performances. This was a 1980s solo piano version of the Miles Davis tune Solar. I didn't play Keith the video of it, but I'm going to actually put the video next to Keith. But I really want you to see Keith's reaction to it. He doesn't remember this at all. This is your version of Solar, okay?
Oh. Okay.
It's from a live concert. that's riding the wave.
Yeah, that's great.
Wow, thank you.
That
very
is
much.
really-
Good to know.
Just amazing. It just all flow, right? Nothing is anything even going through your mind when you're playing? It's
No.
just channeling, right?
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah.
Fun to hear, right?
Thank you. It's my
Yeah, I think I have more hands. I only have one more, though.
Only one more hand,
Yeah.
right? After finishing up in Keith's studio, we adjourned down to his listening area in his living room, and he played me a piece that he had played me 2 weeks before when I was there visiting. It was him and the Eastman Chamber Orchestra from, I believe, 1976. So he wrote this piece and went and performed it, and then had forgotten about it for years, and somebody sent him a CD of it just recently. And it took us a while to get the camera set up. We were listening to it, so it kind of starts a little bit into the piece, but I wanted you to get a feel for it because it's amazing. Let's check it out.
Fourths. Yes. Beautiful. Awesome. Keith, that's so funny that we talked about the fourths.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
It's like the only time that you played fourth
Like
sings
that, yeah.
like that.
Well, I remember the little groups I was supposed to comment on before we did that piece. The groups that were in Eastman,
Uh-huh.
kids. I don't know what happened to them, but anyway. They were trying some, they were students. They were truly trying to figure out what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, Keith, if they're watching this video, maybe we'll hear from them. Maybe they'll put it in the comments section, because I'm sure that they remember being there with you there, commenting
that's
on
true,
them.
yeah. Okay.
Fantastic. All right, guys, I think we're good.
Great.
I'd like to thank Keith and his lovely wife Akiko for inviting me into their home to do this interview. This was really a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and I'm so grateful to have gotten a chance to interview him. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching.